Do you have anything else to say for yourself, Mr. Williams?
Cancer in my plumbing. And it's none of your goddamn business. Sit down! None! Sit down!
Hi guys, welcome to our channel. One of Chicago's best lawyers returns to his childhood home in Indiana, where his father, the city judge, is suspected of murder. He seeks to discover the truth, so he returns to his family after many years. Check the title of the movie in the description. The film opens with a woman watering hydrangeas. Among Chicago's top defense attorneys, Hank Palmer stands out. His rival lawyer, Mike Cotton, argues with him in the courtroom bathroom and challenges him about accepting the representation of criminals. Hank convinces him that only rich people can afford his expenses. Meanwhile, Hank's phone rings, but he ignores it. After a break time, the trial resumes, and Hank's economic criminal client reminds him that he hired him to win the case. As soon as the trial starts, Hank's phone rings again, and this call seems to contain bad news for him. Hank informs the judge that his mother died this morning and asks for an adjournment until he returns. Since Cotton is not convinced, Hank allows the judge to listen to the message, and finally, the court agrees to his request. Lauren, Hank's daughter, insists on taking her to his mother's funeral. Still, Hank refuses, and it is clear from their conversation that the relationship between Hank and his father is not good. He and his wife, Lisa, are about to divorce, and Hank warns that their daughter will live with him. However, Lisa is against it because she believes he knows nothing about her and is not with the family most of the time. Hank angrily talks about Lisa's secret affair with her college friend and accuses her of infidelity, leaving the house in a rage for his mother's funeral in Carlinville, Indiana. Upon reaching his hometown, he pays respect to his mother over her dead body and touches his lifeless hands. Moments later, his younger brother Dale, who seems to have autism and is very fond of cameras and filming, joins him, and they hug each other after a long time. After that, their older brother Glenn, who was once one of the best baseball players, arrives, and they face each other coldly because they haven't seen each other in years. When Glenn asks why he didn't come with his family, Hank avoids giving a straight answer because he doesn't want his brother to know about the divorce between him and his wife. Hank decides to secretly visit his father, who is the town judge. His father, Judge Joseph Palmer, is arguing a case in local court. Despite having just bought a truck, the man claims he can't pay child support, yet Judge asks him to hand over the keys to his truck to his pregnant ex-wife, who is suing him. He calls bailiff Gus for this, but strangely, he doesn't remember his name, much to Hank's surprise. The next morning, before going to the funeral, the judge thanked the attendees and realized that Hank was also there, but he welcomed him coldly. After that, Judge shows his strict personality and asks Glenn to ensure his kids are together because he goes to sleep and doesn't want to hear them. At the same, he scolds Hank for parking his car in front of the door and asks Dale not to film for tomorrow's funeral. After he leaves, Hank is angry at his father's humiliating behavior among the guests and scolds him. His room has become a storage area because his father used to put old things in his room during these years. The next day, he arrives late to the breakfast ceremony and is upset that he was not informed, and it seems that he and his father cannot get along. After his father and brothers leave, he announces that he will be joining them. He discovers that Samantha, his high school sweetheart, is a cafeteria worker. They haven't seen each other in a long time, so Hank is surprised to see her. In the cemetery after the funeral, Judge stays a few minutes longer to say his last goodbye to his wife. That night, Hank warns Glenn about their father's drinking and says he does not remember the name of bailiff Gus, but Glenn explains that their dad has not drunk for 28 years. Moments later, Judge informs them that he is going to the store to shop, and the brothers also decide to spend the night at the bar. At the bar, after a bad experience in court by Judge, the locals are very angry with his family and start blaming Glenn. Just as Glenn is about to pick a fight with that man, Hank interrupts with his rapid-fire speech and, being a prominent lawyer, warns them of the consequences of their actions, which could even land them in jail. The attractive bar worker, Carla, is impressed by Hank's personality and tries to seduce him. While Glenn and Dale are extremely drunk, they see Hank doing an unexpected act with Carla. When they return home, while parking, Hank deliberately directs Glenn so that the back of the car hits the garage door, and he seems to enjoy it. The next morning, the Palmer brothers discover that the front end of their father's Cadillac is badly damaged. To their surprise, he doesn't remember that he caused the cat accident and tries to blame his sons. Hank knows the cause of this accident is his father's drunkenness. With his stubbornness, Hank and his father get into an argument. The judge revealed that his relationship with Lisa was getting divorced. Hank gets very angry and says that he will never come back. Then he leaves the house, and when he gets on the plane, he remembers memories from his childhood when they were fishing. Meanwhile, Glenn calls him and asks him to return immediately because the police have arrested the judge for murder. They question Judge about his movements last night because, according to evidence, he ran over and killed Mark Blackwell in an accident. Hank quickly intervenes to exonerate his father from the charge and uses his high speaking skills to convince the sheriff. Still, it seems that both Blackwell and Judge were seen around the store last night. Judge claims he returned home from a different route than the one where Blackwell's remains were found, but the sheriff says his vehicle needs to be impounded. After the Palmers return home, Hank angrily but carefully parks the car and warns his father that if the case becomes serious, he will have to state firmly that he has not had a drink in 28 years. But the judge does not believe in him and constantly ignores him. The next morning, while Hank is talking to his daughter, the sheriff suddenly appears and explains that they discovered traces of Blackwell's blood on his father's Cadillac, and that's not all. They take the judge to the police station for further investigation and temporarily release him on bail. When they come out, Blackwell's wife rushes towards them because she believes that Judge is his killer and angrily spits on the window of the vehicle. During the narration of Blackwell's story, it turns out that Judge had sentenced him to 20 years in prison for killing his 16-year-old girl years ago, and Blackwell had just been released from prison. After hearing this story, Judge gets disturbed and asks Glenn to stop the vehicle. Hank tries to convince him that he is not the murderer. However, he does not remember anything about the events of that night. He believes that, according to the evidence, he is definitely the murderer himself. Their arguments with each other out of stubbornness make Hank leave them, and each goes to a different side of the road. That night, Hank is fascinated by the videos from the past that Dale plays, and he is reminded of his mother and past childhood. The next day, the judge stubbornly refuses to let Hank represent him, so he goes to a lawyer named Kennedy, who is not his professional lawyer. Hank is distraught that he will accept his father's representation in such an important case and is extremely disappointed with the consequences. Still, the judge stubbornly believes that Kennedy is an elite lawyer. The first court session comes, and it becomes clear that Dwight Dickham, the prominent lawyer of the city, is in charge of representing the Blackwell family. In the court session, all the evidence is against the judge, and Hank tries to help him by giving information to Kennedy. On the other hand, his lack of professionalism in defending has seriously bothered Hank. His sneaky help and troubles go to the point where the court's order is disrupted, and the judge expels him. Eventually, the court concludes that it has obtained enough evidence to convict the judge, so the court session is extended. This issue has become so widespread that the judge's accusation has been publicly reported in the newspapers. The judge calls Hank, asks him to have a quiet and peaceful conversation, and informs him that Kennedy has resigned so that a better lawyer can replace him. Hank asks him to be honest about what happened that night, and Judge admits that he only remembers going to the store to buy eggs and not much else. Hank offers an option that he is willing to represent him for free, and when he returns to his room, he finds that his father has agreed to let Hank be his lawyer. Hank is looking for evidence of his father's innocence. When he and Judge go to the scene of the accident, he asks him again if he drank alcohol that night. The judge answers in the negative. However, he admits that he has colon cancer and is recovering soon, something that no one knows about, and only Hank's mother knew about it. Hearing this, Hank believes that they can use this disease as a defense to reduce his abilities due to chemotherapy, but Judge disagrees. His old beliefs have not allowed his illness to be revealed because he believes that it can affect what people say about him after his death.
This accident is a legal iron ball, Henry. You can't screw it up.
Hank is fed up with his father's strange behavior. The next morning, he decides to wear an old t-shirt and ride a bike to remember the past, and his carelessness causes him to fall. Moments later, Samantha sees him, and Hank gets into her car. To his surprise, he realizes that Carla is her daughter and asks Samantha who her father is. Carla admits that due to her mother's love, she was born with a stranger and will go to Georgetown soon. After that, Hank selects the jury due to the infamy of the rival lawyer, Dickham, and also with the help of Kennedy. He does this simply by inquiring about their background and signaling Kennedy to confirm them. Lauren, who couldn't bear to be away from her father, arrives in Indiana on a flight. Despite Hank's descriptions of Judge's character and bad manners, when they get home, he warmly welcomes his granddaughter, whom he has never seen before. It surprised Hank. That night before bed, Lauren asks about Glenn's championship cups. Hank explains that he could have played on one of the best teams, but one day, when he and Glenn were in high school, they had a bad accident. Glenn's hand was badly injured, and from then on, he couldn't play baseball. When Hank and Samantha get together, they do things that remind them of their teenage years. They enter the bar at night without permission by breaking the glass. Samantha later informs him that she is more than just an employee there, In fact, she now owns the bar, and it was for fun that she forced Hank to break into it. She kisses him, and a few moments later, Hank refuses to continue and informs her that he will leave this city after completing this case, which makes her sad. The next day, Hank secretly takes his father to a riverside cabin for chemotherapy, where he forces the doctor to talk about his father's illness. He realizes that not only is Judge's cancer not getting better, but it is so advanced that he doesn't have much chance to live. He is despondent about this. That night, while he and Lauren are eating dinner, he hears a noise and moments later, he realizes that the judge has lost control and fallen to the ground. He gets him up, but the complications of the disease create a tragic situation for both of them, and Hank has to clean his father in the bathroom. He takes Lauren out for ice cream, and when asked about her future career, Lauren replies that she would like to be a race car driver. Although it seems like a stupid idea, Hank allows his daughter to experience driving. Contrary to Hank's idea, she seems to know a lot about the stormy relationship between him and her mother, Lisa, and realizes they will divorce soon. However, choosing to live with Hank or Lisa has become a big challenge for her. When Hank sends her to Chicago, he sees a similar pattern of behavior between her and Carla. He strongly doubts that Carla might be his daughter. Referring to the date of his breakup with Samantha, he realizes that Carla was born 9 months after he left her. The next day, the second session of the court is held, and Hank tries with great effort to challenge the evidence presented regarding his father's accusation of murder. He presents convincing reasons that can influence the jury's verdict of his father's innocence. That night, Hank hears disturbing sounds from his father's room and soon realizes that Judge is suffering from the loss of his wife. Hank comes over to sympathize and tries to calm him down, then asks him to introduce the best lawyer he's known in years. The judge believes that he is Henry Shawn, a lawyer who has no tricks in his work, and he mentions him as not perhaps the best but the most honest lawyer he has ever met. The next morning, the sheriff and Dickham ask Hank to go to the police station and show him a piece of evidence that pretty much proves that Blackwell's killer was Judge. Surveillance cameras show when he and Blackwell go outside. After a few minutes, the judge changes his direction and rides towards him. Dickham suggests that despite this evidence, he should be satisfied with his father being sentenced to 7 to 10 years in prison. Still, he does not accept, and this further provokes Dickham to threaten to charge his father with first-degree murder with enough evidence. Due to severe storms in Indiana, the family gathers in the basement to watch a family movie made from the videos Dale has collected over the years. The old sequences of this film plunge the family into the depths of past memories. Still, when the scene where Hank and Glenn have an accident is shown, that leads to Glenn's serious injury, Judge angrily asks to stop the film. He kicks the film distribution machine, and his selfishness causes Hank to stand before him and severely criticize his behavior. Judge angrily leaves the basement, Hank follows him, and their argument continues at home about past events. The judge says he paid for Hank's law school, but Hank claims he could do it alone. The two have been estranged due to the judge's harsh treatment of Hank in light of his youthful indiscretions, including a car accident when he was 17 that ruined Glenn's future MLB career and resulted in his father sending Hank to juvenile detention rather than the recommended community.
You know, I didn't just graduate from law school, I graduated first in my class. Good. I was first in my class.
You crippled him, you stole his future, and you called me an asshole!
I was just 17, that's what happened. Oh. I was 17.
After that, Hank goes to his mother's grave to be alone, and then he meets Samantha and asks her very seriously who Carla's father is. Samantha refuses to answer this question and says that she is okay with Carla never knowing who her father is because her father was never meant to be her father. Hank joins his father, who has opened an old liquor and is drinking after 28 years. The judge apologizes for his behavior in revealing Hank's secret divorce to his wife. He asks him to take a shot because of Hank's bad mood. In court, when the CCTV footage is shown as evidence, the judge remembers moments from that night, which made him feel bad and lose control. His sons take him to the hospital, where Glenn claims that he never asked him for anything. His only request from Hank is to not let his father go to jail. Judge requests a meeting with Hank and admits that despite not remembering, he is pretty sure he killed Blackwell. Hank does not want his father to be tried, so he disagrees with what he says, and the judge is forced to threaten him that if he continues, he will be replaced by Kennedy. Eventually, Hank asks him to promise to testify only to what he remembers, and his father agrees. On the final day of the trial, the judge takes the witness's stand after taking the oath. Dickham interrogates him, and contrary to expectations, even though he doesn't remember it, he testifies that he killed Blackwell on purpose, which surprises everyone present.
You killed him intentionally?
Yes.
After that, it's Hank's turn to interrogate, and he challenges his father with this question. Are you under drug treatment?
And it's none of your goddamn business.
Sit down!
None! None! Sit down!
The judge gets angry and demands that he change his lawyer, but according to the law, he must first answer Hank's questions. Hank forces him to confess his cancer with his questions. Judge admits that although he doesn't remember killing him, he does remember the conversation they had in the store.
I remember he, opened his disgusting mouth.
Sorry to hear about your wife. I'm not gonna have to walk too far to piss on both graves. You got him.
Although this issue can overshadow his recent judgments, Hank pushes the judge until he reveals that he had previously given Blackwell a lighter sentence, the biggest mistake of his career. Judge says that Blackwell's condition reminded him of Hank.
I looked at you and saw him.
After the end of the trial, although the jury acquitted him of intentional murder, it is clear that according to the evidence, he was sentenced to 4 years in the Indiana State Prison. After saying goodbye to Glenn and Dale, he is under legal custody. After the trial ends and everyone leaves, Dickham sees Hank crying for his father. Hank and Samantha meet, and once again, he asks who Carla's father is. Samantha finally admits that her father is Glenn. She said that when he left her, she needed some normalcy. However, Samantha believes that she still loves Hank, so they get close and kiss. After returning to Chicago, Hank once again confronts Cotton in the bathroom. Still, he is no longer the same, as it is clear from his words that he is now acting within the framework of justice. 7 months later, he returns as the judge is released from prison on medical parole, where Hank awaits him. He and his father reminisce about their childhood and go fishing, where Judge says he chose him. After praising Hank as a lawyer, Hank starts fishing and moments later realizes that he is dead. On the day of his funeral, according to his wish, the court curtain is now half raised. His behavior clearly shows that he has decided to stay in his hometown, the house where he belongs. At the movie's end, Hank visits the courtroom and turns his father's chair. The chair stands facing him, indicating that he is the next judge of the city. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.